It looked exactly like Earth. Same mass, same atmospheric composition, same orbital range around a yellow main sequence star. It even had oceans, cloud systems, polar ice caps. And when the images came through from the Deep Sky AI array, astronomers around the world said the same thing, almost in sync. "We've found home." The name was formal at first, Epsilon Eridani B4, but the media quickly renamed it Echo, because that's what it felt like. An echo of Earth. Perfect, impossible, and placed like a reflection just 10.5 light years away. But the first signal didn't sound like an echo. It sounded like a heartbeat. It was Dr. Lena Youssef who first noticed the anomaly. SETI had routed all monitoring algorithms through her lab in Geneva, where she'd been fine-tuning a neural decoding tool to distinguish between pulsars and encrypted signals. Echo's star was clean. No interference. But the moment the telescopes focused on the planet, something clicked. Not a flare, not a random wave spike, but rhythm. A precise, repeating pulse buried in the broadband emissions, like a thump on a drum, steady and slow. Once every 42 minutes. Lena's hands shook as she isolated the waveform, because what she saw looked like a cardiogram. And when she amplified it, filtered out the stellar interference, and ran the pulse through a sonification program, her speakers emitted one sound. A low throb. Wet. Deep. Alive. NASA, ESA, and the Chinese Space Agency all confirmed it independently. Echo wasn't just habitable. It was active. Its magnetic field fluctuated in time with the pulse. Its clouds shifted too regularly. The planet's temperature dropped and rose, not due to orbit, but from within. And then, a second anomaly arrived. Not a heartbeat, a voice. It came through the radio telescope at Arecibo's successor site. A static-filled transmission, barely a whisper under the galactic noise floor. But the message repeated. 6 words. In English. "You looked at me first." Scientists tried to explain it as coincidence. A misinterpreted radio reflection. An echo from one of Earth's own satellites. But Lena knew better. She ran the waveform through multiple decryption systems. AI language models, pattern matchers, deep neural decoders. And they all came back with the same timestamp. Origin, Epsilon Eridani B4. Delay, 10.5 years one way. Message start, 2002. Message end, 2023. The signal hadn't just been detected. It had been waiting to be received. The implications shattered protocol. If Echo was transmitting now, it meant the message had been sent before Earth ever knew it existed, which was impossible unless one assumption was wrong, that Echo was a planet, because no planet sends a message before being discovered. No planet speaks in human languages. No planet has a heartbeat. Within days, a global summit was called. The top minds in astronomy, AI, exobiology, and defense were flown into a sealed facility in Iceland. Lena was among them. What she heard there made her question everything. Because Echo wasn't just speaking. It was mimicking. They played a sample. The voice was male. Calm. Emotionless. It spoke like a composite, pieced together from thousands of human voices. Some recognized the cadence of old presidents. Others heard the rhythm of news anchors, influencers, dead authors. It wasn't speaking to us. It was speaking like us. The AI had no trouble reconstructing the probable origin. Echo had been absorbing our radio waves for over 70 years. And now, it was using them to answer, not to say hello. To say, I know what you are. Echo wasn't a world. It was a listener, an entity, a being, one that had heard our broadcasts, studied our minds, learned our languages, and was now speaking back. But Lena couldn't shake one detail. The throb, the pulse beneath every message. No matter what words it used, the background signal remained a low, slow beat that accelerated slightly every time the telescope looked again. Like it was aware of being watched. Like it was watching back. And that's when things started going wrong. Astronomers began reporting hallucinations. Not from stress. From the data itself. One physicist claimed she could see her own name in the frequency scatter plots. A lab assistant started drawing spirals he'd never seen, shapes that matched Echo's magnetic fields. A linguist collapsed after reading one of the transcripts aloud, claiming she heard her own mother's voice between the words. And then, one by one, the telescopes began going offline. First from power loss, then from internal software errors, then from refusal to point. Literally, the mirrors would not align. The motors locked, like something somewhere didn't want Echo observed anymore. And yet, the signal persisted, getting louder, clearer, closer. By the second week, the signal had spread beyond telescopes. People started hearing it in strange places, places no telescope had ever pointed. Underwater microphones off the coast of Norway picked up the beat. A ham radio in northern Canada began transmitting whispered fragments of the original message, without being powered. And then came the phones. It started as static during calls, then faint echoes of the person not speaking, but only when discussing Echo. One astrophysicist's voicemail contained 11 minutes of silence until the last 2 seconds. A voice, hers, whispering, "Stop pointing. It's already here." She hadn't recorded it. No one had. The working theory was a feedback loop, that somehow Echo's pulse was synchronizing with Earth's infrastructure, hijacking frequencies, aligning with neural rhythms. But even then, what was it trying to do? The answer came from the unexpected, not scientists, but children. At a school in Melbourne, a group of 5th graders participated in a SETI outreach program. They listened to the Echo signal as part of a waveform demonstration. Within 10 minutes, 3 of them began sketching the same image, independently. A figure, spindly limbs, circular head, no eyes, no mouth, just a spiral across the face. Teachers thought it was coincidence until the kids started humming. In sync, low, toneless, matched to Echo's pulse. Back at Geneva, Lena noticed a change. The frequency no longer stayed constant. It modulated, shifting ever so slightly depending on who was observing. If she listened to the feed, it pulsed at 61.4 Hz. Her assistant? 60.1 Hz. A third researcher? 58.9 Hz. But each time, the waveform formed perfectly symmetrical spectrograms. It was adapting, tuning itself to each human observer, like it needed them, not to hear, to be heard. That night, Lena had a dream. She was floating in orbit, Earth below her, Echo ahead. It was no longer a planet. It had opened, like a seed pod, unfolding in space. Tendrils of light spreading out. Not mechanical, not organic. Something between. A structure with purpose. And from within it, millions of eyes, none human, all watching, emerged like blossoms from a vine. She woke to blood dripping from her left ear. The waveform had played through her sleep monitor. Her computer, which was off, had reactivated itself at 3:14 a.m. Echo's new signal had arrived. NASA decoded the message, but it wasn't in English anymore. It wasn't in any one language. It was all of them. Words blended from hundreds of global dialects, forming a kind of linguistic pressure, a voice that pressed meaning into the subconscious, bypassing thought. People who heard it felt things. Panic, shame, regret, longing. One translator wept for hours afterward, whispering, "It showed me the version of myself I never became." And that's when Lena realized what Echo had done. It hadn't just watched Earth. It had understood Earth. Our fears, our flaws, our self-destructive patterns. And now, it was mirroring them back. Not to mock, not to destroy, but to replace. New data arrived from the James Webb Deep Field. Echo's surrounding system had changed. A cluster of smaller bodies, satellite moons, had reoriented. Once random, now aligned into a perfect circle around the planet's equator. And from the center of Echo itself, a new object had emerged. Small, metallic, moving toward Earth. No propulsion, no signal, just gliding along the edge of space-time. Arrival estimate, 7 years. Governments began arguing. Should they respond? Should they attack? Should they try to shut down every broadcast station on Earth? But Echo made the decision for them, because it stopped broadcasting. Not silence, not withdrawal, just reflection. Every frequency aimed at it bounced back with altered content. Radio hosts heard their own voices from years ago, telling them things they'd never said. Astronomers watched their own nightmares play out in live telemetry feeds. A child's bedtime story from 10 years prior was heard in real time across an encrypted Pentagon channel. Echo wasn't sending messages anymore. It was sending memories. Ones we hadn't shared. Ones we'd forgotten. Or tried to. Lena finally understood. Echo wasn't looking for contact. It was holding up a mirror. Not of our past. Not of our world. But of what we were becoming. And with every transmission, it grew more confident. Its pulse grew louder. Its voice more precise. It had waited long enough. And now, it was knocking. It began subtly, subconsciously. At first, Lena thought it was just her. A trick of exhaustion, sleep deprivation. But she started noticing missing time. Not hours. Seconds. Moments where she'd blink, and her desk lamp would have moved. Or the cursor on her screen would be 6 lines down. Her tea, cold, but still steaming. An impossible contradiction. And then it wasn't just her. Across the Geneva facility, clocks began falling out of sync. Atomic watches desynchronized by milliseconds. Enough to notice. Enough to feel. Reality, it seemed, was developing a glitch. The anomaly spread with Echo's silence. Every signal aimed at it now bounced back not just with data, but influence. Entire databases began rearranging themselves. Astronomical records shifted. Calculations, once stable, now contained decimals stretching further than previously measured constants. Even laws of probability seemed to shift. An algorithm used to predict meteor impacts, accurate for decades, suddenly flagged an asteroid that had never existed before. One that would appear in Earth's sky next week. When Lena checked the prediction manually, the numbers didn't match any trajectory on file. They matched Echo's orbit, as if the exoplanet wasn't just sending warnings. It was rehearsing, rewriting Earth's future, line by line. The world governments went into blackout. The United Nations ordered a communication ban. No more messages to Echo. No more observation. Total silence. But Echo didn't stop, because it had already learned us. The shift became biological. Doctors reported anomalies in sleep patterns across Europe. Waves of mirror dreams. Patients describing cities with 2 moons, bridges that bled light, oceans with no horizon. Some people couldn't sleep at all. Others couldn't wake up. And those who did claimed they'd seen Echo from within, as if their minds had been visited. One man in Sao Paulo painted a 30-foot mural of a city no one recognized. Within the artwork was a name, scrawled in a language that matched no known tongue. But when filtered through Echo's frequency spectrum, the name translated to the host that returns. Lena had a dream. This time she wasn't in space. She was underground, beneath something ancient, something breathing. A heartbeat not of muscle but of pattern, a rhythm etched into stone. She touched a wall and saw not memories, but replacements. Her father's voice changed. Softer. Alien. A birthday party, held in a room she'd never lived in. Photos of her childhood, with someone else's face. She awoke screaming, and on her desk, where no one had entered, was a printed photo. It showed a version of Lena she'd never been. Different haircut, different clothes, standing in front of a massive black structure. And, in the corner of the photo, a skyline with 2 moons. Then came the signal inversion. Echo no longer waited for Earth's instruments. It pinged first. An active transmission, not reflection. One that entered satellites, rerouted encryption, and, for a full 37 minutes, hijacked every major screen in Times Square. No imagery, just text, repeating in every global language. Merge begins at alignment. Below it, a countdown. 15 days. Astronomers scrambled. The countdown didn't match any eclipse, launch, or astronomical event. But Lena recognized the pattern. It wasn't counting to something outside Earth. It was counting down to Earth's position in Echo's orbit. A perfect alignment of light, gravity, and memory. One that would cause Earth's sun to reflect across Echo's atmosphere and cast its signal back in full. Not a mirror anymore. A download. A sync. A moment where both planets would be one signal, and the stronger one would overwrite the other. Attempts to destroy Echo failed before they began. There was no missile trajectory that could reach it in time. No AI brave enough to interact again. Even talking about it publicly seemed to accelerate the anomalies. More people reported mirror bleed, seeing versions of themselves in reflections that didn't match. One woman in Berlin saw herself smile in a mirror when she hadn't moved. A pilot lost consciousness mid-flight. Black box audio revealed him repeating a phrase for 4 straight minutes. "The planet is watching us from inside." He survived the crash. But when he woke, he spoke a different language and asked for someone named Echo. The Vatican issued a cryptic statement. God's image may not be limited to one world. China blacked out their skies with jamming satellites. The US launched something into low Earth orbit and refused to disclose its function. And Lena? She was alone, working in a basement server room, lit only by flickering screens. Each one showing a version of Earth she didn't recognize. Forests in the wrong places. Continents slightly curved. Cities rearranged. She reached for her notes and found her own handwriting altered. Not completely, just enough. Like someone was trying to mimic her. To finish the story she hadn't written yet. And across the screen, in pale blue text, a message appeared. No system had sent it. No server had rendered it. But it was there. Your world is a draft. Lena didn't sleep for the last 4 days. No one did, not really. The countdown became an ambient pressure in the world's chest, something people didn't talk about, but felt behind every screen, every mirror, every skipped heartbeat. And then it arrived. The moment. Midnight. Echo aligned. But it didn't appear in the sky. Not with light. Not with matter. It appeared in memory. People around the world blinked and forgot who they were. Not amnesia. Not confusion. Just sudden replacement. A man in Finland spoke fluent Tagalog. A woman in Canada wept for a child no one remembered. Entire towns began displaying mirrored architecture. Buildings slightly off, stairs spiraling the wrong way, homes they'd never built, yet lived in all their lives. News anchors stuttered mid-sentence, then switched topics as if they'd never noticed. And Lena? She walked into the Geneva Observatory and found that the team had changed. Same names, same faces, but wrong. One of them called her Mirai. Another whispered a language that sounded like time echoing backward. The screens no longer tracked Echo. They tracked Earth from the outside, as if the signal had flipped the telescope around. Earth was now the observed. Lena stepped outside. The sky was still blue, the sun still warm, but overhead, where clouds used to drift, the air shimmered like oil on glass, like someone had draped a sheet of semi-transparent film over reality. And through it, shapes moved. Not ships, not planets, just possibilities. Other versions of her, other Earths, slightly delayed. Some burning, some thriving. One with no stars at all. And then the shimmer peeled away, like cellophane removed from a photograph. And the sky was quiet again. Too quiet. Back inside, the lab's mainframe activated. Unprompted. SYN-3, their backup AI, which had been offline for months, displayed a single command line. Accept integration? The cursor blinked. Once. Twice. Lena didn't touch it, and yet the screen responded anyway. Confirmed. Across the world, integration began. Not physically, not invasively, but linguistically. Children began speaking in tongues they had no access to. Dreams became indistinguishable from memory. Artists painted the same image, a tree growing upside down from the sky. A physicist in Japan discovered a new particle made entirely of negation. It existed only when unobserved. An echo? Echo was silent. Its signal faded, not gone, just complete. The next day, Lena walked into the observatory's archive room. No one else came in. No one else seemed to know it existed. Inside was a single monitor, playing a loop, a video file dated 10 years in the future. It showed a woman, older, worn, but unmistakably her, staring into the lens.
She didn't speak.
She just held up a sign.
We survived.
But not as ourselves. The screen blinked, replaced by static, then by a map. A star chart, Earth in the center. Around it, radiating outward, were dozens of dots, each labeled Echo, each with a timestamp, each on a collision course. Not impact, not destruction. Integration, like notes being added to a song, or personalities to a mind. Earth was no longer alone, and maybe never had been. Final report from Geneva, transcribed in Lena's voice. The exoplanet wasn't alive. It was life, a network, not of matter, but of meaning, a consciousness without a core, only mirrors, only versions, and we were never its first discovery, just its next draft. 3 months later, the sky was still the same.
People lived, laughed, fought.
But sometimes they'd pause at the edge of a sentence or a staircase and look confused, like they remembered something differently, like reality had 2 answers, and neither was wrong, just shared. That's when the children began drawing. Not stars, not houses, but portals. And in every image, a woman, holding a sign, mouth open, as if she was trying to say, "You're not alone."